going to be learning how to draw an angle on a Cartesian plane, or drawing angles in 4 quadrants. And that's going to allow us to draw angles that are larger than the angles that we're normally used to, like 30 degrees or 60 degrees, or something like that. So we're going to have so the way we draw a standard angle is we're going to have, so when you think of an angle, it has 2 arms. And then the angle is between those 2 arms. And that's how we're used to seeing an angle. So that's an arm, and that's an arm. And then what we're going to do is we're going to call this the initial arm, and this is going to be the terminal arm. And then we're going to draw an angle in something called standard position. So what standard position is that the initial arm is always on the positive x-axis. So that's the positive x-axis. Then we draw a terminal arm somewhere else. And then the angle, so this over here, I should probably mark that. This is the initial arm. This is the terminal arm. And then the angle goes counterclockwise, so think of a clock going the other way, starting at the initial and going to the terminal arm. And that's how we draw an angle in standard position. So let's draw some angles. So let's say, for example, we want to draw 40 degrees. Now the letter I'm often going to use for angles is going to be this thing over here, and that's a theta. So I'm going to say I want to draw theta, which is 40 degrees. And I want to draw it on the Cartesian plane. So the initial arm goes there, and we know that this is 0 degrees, and this is 90 degrees, and that's 180 degrees. So 40 degrees would be less than 90, so it would be something like this, and the angle would go from there to there. Let's do some, maybe we should do more than one a page. I'm going to wreck a forest. So we'll have theta equals 120 degrees, and we'll try theta equals 215 degrees. So remember, we start here, that's 90, that's 180, 0, 90, 180. 120 degrees starts there and somewhere over there, and that's what the angle looks like. It's going to be from there to there. 215, notice it goes up by 90 every time, so if that's 180, then this is 270. We start over there, and 215 is going to end up over here. So that's going to be like that. So that's how we draw a 120 degree angle. That's how we draw a 215 degree angle. Okay, let's say we have 215, and then we'll do, let's try negative. So 0, 90, 180, 270. If we continued, it would be also 360. We start over there. We go to 315, which is somewhere over there, in that quadrant, in that quarter of the graph. And then the angle, when we draw it, looks like this. So that's our angle. The angle goes from there to there. We could have negative angles in standard position. The way we have a negative angle is the initial starts off always on the positive x-axis. Instead of going clockwise, we're going to go 40 degrees counterclockwise. Instead of going counterclockwise, we're going to go clockwise. And that would be a theta of 40 degrees. Let's say we had to do negative 219 degrees. So our initials over there. When we get to there, so that's 0, but now we're that's at minus 90, that's at minus 180, that's at minus 270, if we're going in that direction. And minus 219 is going to be somewhere in this quadrant. And then the arrow would look like this. And that's what an angle of negative 219 looks like. Now we could, though, no one says that angles have to be between negative 360 or 360. We could, for example, have an angle of 390 degrees. So an angle of 390 degrees. So we start there. And remember, that's 90, 180, 270, 360. But it's 390, so we have to actually go a bit past that. So if we continued on, that would be 450. So what we're going to do is we're going to go 360 degrees around and then go a little bit more. And that's an angle. This whole thing is an angle of 390 degrees. We can have an angle of 510 degrees. You have angles of 1,000 degrees. So this angle would be, well, that wasn't very pretty, but so go around, we're at 360, 450, and that's going to be it, right? Because it's somewhere between 450 and 540. Ooh, I'm off the screen there. Which means an angle of 510 looks something like this. 1,000 degrees would, of course, be even bigger. Let's start there. So we go around once, that's 360. Go around a second time, that's another 360, so 720. 720, 810, 900, 990, and we end up over here. And that's an angle of 1,000. So that's an angle of 1,000 degrees. And we could also, we could go more than one turn backwards. If it was minus 500, that would end up looking something like that's what negative 500 degrees. That's what an angle of negative 500 degrees looks like. Now, when I talk about the quadrants, we're actually going to name the quadrants, and we're going to name it kind of in the order that an angle goes through. So if that's our initial arm, and we notice that, remember, angles go kind of in this direction. So this is the first quadrant we get to. So we're going to call this Q1. If the angle continues, it gets to there. And so this is the second quadrant. If we continue, that's the third quadrant. And this is the fourth quadrant. And that's what we're going to say. So we're going to say Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, and that's in the order that the angles go through as we're considering them from the initial arm.